You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up. You got to pump it up, don't you know? Pump it up.
You got to pump it up, Trent. You have to.
I didn't see any energy from you whatsoever when that song was playing.
I'm kind of in a fog over here. It's been a long couple days, long few days. Was up north for a while, camping with the family, and then on Sunday I left the campground, drove 2.5 hours south to Detroit to cover the football camp down there in Detroit, which was a really awesome camp. By the way, Alex Orji was down there with Michigan State quarterback Aiden Childs, and it was interesting to see that dynamic a little bit. But down in the Detroit area, and I'll tell you what, those kids went nuts for Alex Orji. I mean, it just being around him and seeing the way that people respond to him, and seeing the way that he teaches the game to kids, and the way he commands a room, and just the professionalism he carries himself with, the maturity he has. I am going to be shocked if he is not QB1, not just to start the season, but I feel like it's a whole season deal for Alex Orji. I feel like he has grown and matured so much from last year to this year. And it's not saying he didn't have those qualities, but you can just tell. I mean, we've talked about this before. Following the spring game, when he came in and met with the media, there was just such a level of maturity in listening to him talk, and the way he talked about the offense and the way he works with some of the coaches. And then you could see that on full display down in Detroit. I mean, he was working the whiteboard, and he was getting on, if a kid wasn't paying attention, getting on that kid's ass, making sure hey, what kind of notes are you putting down right now? You got to talk louder. You got to speak with authority if you want to be a quarterback. All that stuff that, these kids need to hear. He was on top of it. So that was
he slinging it around a little bit?
Not really. I was kind of hoping I'd get to see him go through some drills and maybe get a little inside intel, like seeing Alex Orji sort of toss the ball around the field a little bit. But no, that day was for the kids, and I think he understood that. But, again, it was just really neat to watch him go through those drills and watch the way he interacts with the kids. And you can kind of see it's captain material. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's that level. This guy just carries himself in a way that screams captain, screams QB1. But obviously
he commanded the room during the spring game. If you remember right, there was 4 or 5 players in the room, and then Alex Orji comes walking in, and every reporter just drops to him what they were doing and heads right over to Orji and surrounds him.
Yeah. I mean, that's the territory. I mean, dude, when he walked into the gym, there was, I don't know how many kids were there, 200 or 300 kids, but when he walked into the gym, the kids went wild. So, he's got that power, but like I was saying, obviously it needs to translate on the football field, and, it's going to have to, lead to success in Michigan winning at a high level. But if the way he conducts himself is any indication of what we can expect this fall, I'm excited to see what it looks like on the field. So I did that on Sunday, and then I drove back to the campground, wanted to spend the rest of the day and night with my family, then woke up this morning, drove back to Ann Arbor. We finally got access to the Sports Illustrated site. So for anybody who's been, following along on the Facebook page, you've probably seen a whole host of articles come out today, which we're excited about that we have that opportunity. So we're live on the Sports Illustrated site now. You're going to see a lot of articles, putting out a lot of good content. I as a side note, Trent, because I was on the road so much this weekend, I made a mistake. I actually made 2 mistakes. Now that I think about it, 2 big mistakes that I typically don't make, but I made them this weekend. I had McDonald's twice. On the road, and I've gone without fast food for months. I feel like I've really been, I've been trying to do better on my diet. I went to the doctor, had my blood work done. They were like, well, cholesterol's a little bit high. You got to cut back. I'm like, fuck it. Okay. I'm changing my ways, changing my life. But I did have McDonald's twice. And I don't know why it is. I know going into McDonald's. Yeah. See, Tony Petrosky, he knows it's.
What do you get there? Because I haven't been to McDonald's in a long time.
I'm really afraid to say it. Just get a quick little 20-piece with a large fry and a Coke. Just simple. Just simple, man. You know what I mean? Doesn't take a lot. But I know going
3 Big Macs, couple large fries.
I know when I pull in the parking lot, I I can already tell what's going to happen. I'm going to eat it, and I'm going to feel like shit, and I'm going to hate myself. And then this is like a whole process that I go through. And sure enough, like I did it twice and hated myself twice. So I don't know. I don't know why people do it. You said you haven't done fast food in a while.
Well, I do Wendy's. I'll do Wendy's occasionally, but
you were acting like you were some sort of
dude, look, listen. You have Wendy's, right? And then McDonald's, it's way down here, man. Like there's a big step up.
Oh. I mean,
Wendy's.
I do like Wendy's. I do like Wendy's from time to time, but McDonald's is like king dingling around here in the good old USA. So anyway, so I made that mistake twice. So I'm hating myself for it. I'm feeling the McDonald's. It's really weighing me down. But yeah, I got back today. We got the Sports Illustrated site rocking and rolling. And then once again, Trent convinced me to go live. I was like, you know what, man, I'm a little burned out. I don't know. I just feel like I've been all over the place lately. The site's going. I was at the camp yesterday, and then I was camping with the family, and Trent said, no, we got to power through. We got to go live again. And so
if it wasn't for me, nobody would have a show anymore. Like this show would probably be canceled.
The last two shows for sure would have been canceled. And the last show ended up turning out to be pretty good. I told you before we went live, I think this one might suck, but we'll see. We're going to try to work very hard to make the show not suck. Let's start out of the gate with recruiting. And the reason I want to do that is there's a couple reasons. Obviously, Michigan State is substantially better right now in the recruiting trail than they were this time last month. And we talked about this on the last show. When we were early June, we were sort of looking at the rankings, and Michigan was outside of the top 50. And I specifically remember you saying, like, if it looks this way come July 1st, then we need to be concerned. Well, Michigan went from outside the top 50 to now a top 15 recruiting class, according to 247 Sports. A lot of highly rated guys in there. And then there's an individual that you reached out, you spoke to personally, this recruit. It would be a big get if Michigan could get him another 4-star caliber player. Trent, just walk through who the player was, you reached out to him, and what did you gain from the conversation?
Yeah, so this is the first time I've ever reached out to a recruit and did an interview, but it went really well. I reached out to Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, IMG Academy. He's a 4-star recruit. He's a big-time linebacker. Michigan's really, really trying to get him. It seems like he might be a little bit of a Notre Dame lean. His brother played there. He's got some strong ties to Notre Dame. But after talking to him, and I was kind of seeing stuff floating around on the internet anyway, but I think Michigan's right there for him. He said that it was his second time visiting Michigan back on June 20th, and he said it exceeded all of his expectations. It was the first time that his family was able to get up to Ann Arbor with him, and he said that Michigan blew him away. That they really care about him, not just as a football player, but as a man. They don't just care about the X's and O's. Of course, Michigan's big on academics, right? And he was kind of talking about that a little bit. He was talking about how, and I didn't know this, but Brian Jean-Marie, Michigan's linebacker coach, they had a very strong relationship when he was at Tennessee coaching. So that was a big reason as to why Owusu-Boateng was interested in Michigan. Obviously, Michigan lost basically their whole defensive staff when Jim Harbaugh left. So he had to get to know all these new coaches. He had to get to know Wink Martindale, but he had a very close relationship with Jean-Marie. And he's like, hey, it was a no-brainer to go visit Michigan when I found out that they were bringing Coach BJ over, is what he said. And it was very glowing remarks about Michigan. He talked about how Michigan cares about him more than just a football player. He singled out Coach Tress, the new strength and conditioning coach. He said that guy really, really cares. He said he doesn't just care about your physical development, but he cares about you as a person and how you are there. So yeah, it's hard. I can't really say one way or another. If I say
flat out, are you committing to Michigan? Can you give me the scoop now? I mean, look, I don't know if he's going to come to Michigan here, but I don't have. This is a grown ass man we're talking about here, right? Linebacker seems to be a Notre Dame lean, but I'm pretty sure I saw him in the parking lot when he was on his recruiting visit, because I saw a dude wearing the number 1 jersey, looked like a big ass dude, and he was walking around near the big house or whatever. So that must have been the same time. I was down there for a different NIL event, and I was like, who the hell is that? And then I saw these pictures come out, and it started to make sense. So Yeah, I mean, it would be nice if Michigan could reel in guys like that, but we'll have to see, because for as much momentum as they have, again, Michigan top 15, we know that they're not going to be bringing in a lot of 5 stars in the coming days, right? They're going to load up on 3 and 4 stars. And this recruiting class, this 2025 class, already ranked higher than the 2024 class, Harbaugh's last class that he signed. So that just goes to show you how well Sharon Moore and that new staff is doing. And I'm sure it's difficult to recruit under the circumstances when thank goodness they won a national championship, because what an incredible selling point that is. Because in the absence of that, you lose head coach Jim Harbaugh, you lose a bunch of members of the staff, as you mentioned, Trent, and that might be a pretty hard sell on the recruiting trail. But it does seem like things are picking up, and people are mentioning it in the comments. That Michigan top 15, that's where you would expect to see this program at this point, somewhere between top 15 and top 10. But as I said on the last show, when you break it down per recruit and you look at the 247 rankings, like Michigan's overall rating per recruit, they're like number 7 nationally. So they're bringing in high caliber guys. And I think it's important to bring guys that are bought in and that want to be at the University of Michigan. And so that's really nice to hear him talk about, just the focus and the care. And I'm sure let's be real, all football programs and all coaches talk about how much they're going to care about the player. Sure. But I think that's true at the University of Michigan, because it is different. You know what I mean? They're pretty upfront. We're not going to throw you a bag to come to the school. You're going to come here and you're going to have to earn it. And you can see guys in the program. I mean, Donovan Edwards is a perfect example. This is a guy who could have went and played football, entered the transfer portal, and gone anywhere else in the country and been the starting running back wherever he wanted to go and get paid handsomely to do so. Opted to stay at the University of Michigan. Now entering his senior year, is about to be the guy for the first time in his career. So overall, I mean, thoughts just on where we were a month ago compared to where we are today. Is this more in line with where you thought Michigan should be and would be by July 1st?
Yeah, like I said, if they weren't, then I think that fans truly could panic. But no, yeah, I think that this is definitely where, coming off a national championship, it seemed like they weren't capitalizing at all. And then all of a sudden you had a wave of recruits commit. I think Michigan had 8 commitments in June, and they were all talented. Like, they were good recruits. They weren't getting these low end 3 stars. Like, they were getting high end 4 stars. And they had, I think, 2 high end 3 stars commit to them as well. And yeah, I think they're on a roll. I think that Michigan's going to keep getting guys coming in. And as long as the season goes well, I think Michigan could definitely be a top 10 team.
Yeah, agreed. And we've said it before. I know that we brought it up in conversation. I mean, it's a long time between now and signing day, and you still got a season of football to play between now and then. That can be, your best recruiting asset is doing well on fall Saturdays. And I think Michigan's going to do that. And so we'll see where they end up. But again, if they finish somewhere between top 15, top 10 class, I think that is a huge win for Sharon Moore and this new look staff when you just factor in all of the turnover that happened and all of the uncertainty, to be honest, with the NCAA stuff and how that's all going to play out. Michigan seems to be powering through it, and they're doing just fine on the recruiting trail. And it feels like they're bringing in the type of guys that are right for the Michigan football system. And that's what Sharon Moore talked about. Like, guys will decide whenever they want to decide. And we're looking for guys that want to be at the University of Michigan and that buy into what we're doing. And you saw that with guys like Chris Jenkins and Mike Sainristil. And they've been, a guy like Blake Corum, who, came in as a 4-star recruit, but I don't think anybody, did you think Blake Corum was going to leave a Michigan football legend? Like, he bought into the University of Michigan. He bought into Ann Arbor. He bought into, wanting to be that guy, that leader in the community. And I think if people, that's another great selling point, is there's so many examples of just high quality caliber, high character type players and guys that have come through the football program that, the program really does sell itself. So I'm excited to see where it ends up. But again, if it can be top 15, top 10, I think that's a huge win for Sharon Moore in his first year as head coach. Let's move into another. It's a story that you put out today. I was going through the list before we went live. I thought I was going to agree with Trent on most of these. And then as I went through it, I'm like, what the hell is this? No. What is this?
This is a tough team right here.
So we're going to have something to say about that pick. I
like to know where Lou Holtz is right now.
Really, Trent? Really?
I can't wait to hear what you have to say about all of these guys.
I can't wait either. I don't know. I just looked at the list before we went live, but I was disappointed, to say the least. So let's go through this. This is Trent Noop's rankings for the head football coaches in the Big Ten Conference. And now, we got UCLA, we got Oregon. So we've got new teams that are part of the conference. Trent went through and looked at all 18 teams and ranked all 18 head coaches. Trent, I'm going to let you lead the way since this is your list. Let's start at number 18, and then we'll chop it up and we'll see where we agree, where we disagree. This goddamn V-neck is really distracting me. I feel like it keeps coming down and like my chest hair is hanging out. So I keep trying to like pull it back here. Maybe I should just embrace it. Maybe I think
you should. Yeah.
Will this increase the following? We've talked about this, Trent. Do we need more nudity on the podcast? Is that the game changer? Nah,
well, why don't you try it? Why don't you try it out and then we'll see what happens?
I can't do it. I don't know why I even buy these goddamn. Yeah. Why, where's the gold chain? Maybe next year I'll be able to afford a gold chain, CJ. All right, let's start at number 18. Who did you have as the worst head football coach in the Big Ten Conference heading into the 2024 season?
He hasn't coached a single game yet as a head coach. So I've got Deshaun Foster at UCLA. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. He's taken over for Chip Kelly. There's not much to say. He has not coached a game of college football.
Yeah, not much to say when you're number 18. When you're just down there, you're down there. You're number 18, bottom of the list. Let's move on. Let's get to number 17. Who do you got?
I've got Ryan Walters from Purdue. He coached one season as a Purdue head coach last season. They went 4-8, nothing special. Purdue wasn't very competitive or good, so I have him at number 17.
And wasn't he pretty vocal about the sign stealing shit too?
He was.
Didn't he have something to say about it? I mean, you're coaching a 4-8 team. Like it's not stealing signs that are your biggest hurdle right now. Yeah, I would agree. Bottom of the barrel. To me, those two could be interchangeable, but because he's coached the seasons, I guess you got to give him the benefit of the doubt. So Ryan Walters, Purdue, number 17. Let's move to number 16. And full disclosure, I've never heard of this guy. I don't know if it means I'm just not very plugged in or I don't pay attention. Never heard of him until I looked at Trent's list. Who do you got at number 16?
Chris was like, is this guy even a coach? Like, who is this dude?
Who the hell is this guy?
16, I have Indiana's new head coach, Curt Cignetti. He was the James Madison coach for several years. They went 11-1 last year at James Madison. But obviously, coming to the Big Ten, Indiana, they're not very good. It's going to be a whole new beast for him.
Yeah, for sure. And Michigan goes on the road and plays Indiana. They do pretty well against the Hoosiers, but look out for Curt Cignetti. Is that how you say it? Cignetti? Yeah, again, never heard of him until you put together this list, but seems right at home there at number 16. What do you got for number 15?
15, I have David Braun. Look, I don't know that many coaches did as much as David Braun did last season. Northwestern was projected to win, I think, 3.4 games according to the analytics. And they fired Pat Fitzgerald. He takes over as the interim head coach, and they went 8-5, including a bowl win. So, I mean, I don't know that anybody truly did as much as David Braun did with the talent that he had to work with. So, hats off to David Braun, but I got to see it again to elevate him on the list.
I mean, you pretty much got to be a doctor to get into Northwestern. So to go 8-5 in the Big Ten Conference, especially after everything that program went through. I was talking to you about that before we went live too. I was like, did the whole issue with Fitzgerald, was that this last year? Or was that like 5 years ago? That feels like forever ago, but you're right. He came into some crazy circumstances, had the Wildcats at 8-5, and overall seems to be a decently solid coach for Northwestern. We'll see how he does in 2024. This one I was a little bit surprised to see so low on the list, Trent. Number 14, who's your guy?
I've got Brett Bielema, and here's why. He was a good coach at Wisconsin. Ever since he left Wisconsin, he has gone downhill. I think he has one winning season at Illinois, which was 2 years ago. He is 18-19 as a head coach at Illinois. So it's not like he's done much since he's went there. And everyone that I have in front of him, I cannot see knocking down to put him over them.
Well, to be fair, I mean, he's at Illinois. You know what I mean? You're not going to win much at Illinois, but I was surprised to see him so low. And maybe that is because, yeah, he was successful at Wisconsin. I think he was like decent at Arkansas. I don't know what his overall record is, but he's 18-19 as a head coach for Illinois. I don't know. I just remember the first time he walked into Big Ten media days, he was wearing loafers without socks. He just had this big ass suit on. I'm like, this looks like a guy you want to barbecue with and have a beer with. And so when I saw him at number 14, I think that's the only reason I felt a little bit offended. But okay, maybe it fits. He's got a losing record at Illinois. So Brett Bielema at number 14, halfway down the list. let's get into number 13. Who do you got?
I have Washington's new coach and Michigan friend, Jed Fish.
Former Michigan man.
He did some great things at Arizona last year, took him 10-3. He's kind of a brand new roster to work with at Washington, but I think even though he hasn't been a head coach very long, I think that he's done enough where he's not at the bottom of the Big Ten, but you can't really put him in that upper half just yet.
Yeah, agreed. He's going to have to earn it. I mean, I think he's one of those guys that has a ton of potential, and you're right, had some success at Arizona, and I think he can do really well out at Washington. I know that they did a lot of activity in the transfer portal, almost 30 guys they brought in from the transfer portal, including the guy that's presumably going to be their starting quarterback, and a guy that I think is going to give Michigan some fits coming over from Mississippi State. I mean, he was prolific through the air. We'll see if that translates out to Washington, but Jed Fish at number 13, I don't really have an issue too much with that. Number 12, I was a little bit surprised on. Who do you got there?
I have Mike Locksley at Maryland at number 12. If you look at his total, he's 29-33 at Maryland. However, they have 3 straight bowl wins under Locksley with the Terps. Maryland's it always seems like Maryland loses games that they shouldn't lose, but they're always a tough out too. You can go back a couple years ago. They almost beat Ohio State. Even last year, they challenged Michigan, the second to last game of the year. So I don't think Maryland's a top team, but they're not bad either. And that's why I have Locksley kind of on that border of where to put him.
Yeah, Locksley's, it's weird because I look at him above a guy like Jed Fish or above a Brett Bielema, and I'm like, is Mike Locksley really better than those guys? But you're right. Like, for some odd reason, I feel like I do this to myself every year when Michigan has to play Maryland. I'm like, oh, watch out for Maryland, sneaky good team. And you're right. Yep. Sometimes they do have a tendency to make a difficult game when they seem to be overmatched. But, you mentioned their bowl record. Yeah, it's easy to win a lot of games in bowl games when you go to shitty bowls. And so that's pretty much what the case is with Maryland. But yeah, it's weird for them because I don't think Maryland's ever going to break through in the Big Ten conference. The same way I view Rutgers, you know what I mean? There's just certain teams that are never going to break through in this conference, and that's how I view Maryland. But Mike Locksley at number 12, I could see him moving down a little bit, but I'm not going to push back too much at number 12. Who do you got at number 11?
Who would you have above Locksley? Out of curiosity.
I might put Jed Fish above him, and I'd be tempted to put Brett Bielema above him as well, just from experience alone. And I think it's like what we talked about before, what he's done with other programs. So I don't necessarily know that that's fair, but I think that those guys, you could interchange, number 13 through number 12 or number 14 through number 12, and I really wouldn't have too much pushback. So I'm fine with Locksley at number 12. Let's go to number 11.
11, I have Rutgers coach Greg Schiano, and I have him here for a couple different reasons. His first stint with Rutgers, I was back in the Big East. Rutgers was actually really good. They had Ray Rice that year, that they were just really, really good. He goes off to the NFL, not very successful. He comes back to Rutgers after a while. He's 19-28 in 4 seasons. Not great, but Rutgers is kind of that team that, like you said, they're probably never going to break through in the Big Ten. It's extremely tough to recruit at Rutgers. But once again, I feel like Rutgers is always competitive under Schiano. Like, they don't win the games, but I would say probably 75% of the time, Rutgers is not an easy team. You can't overlook Rutgers, or they could come out and really surprise you.
Yeah, and before I get into that, CJ, I didn't know that Bielema has a Hawkeye tattoo. To me, that elevates him. That just adds to the aura that is Brett Bielema. But generally speaking, I think Greg Schiano is a really good football coach. I think the biggest thing he's got working against him is that he coaches at Rutgers. And Rutgers is the same case as what I said about Maryland before, is that I just don't see them ever being teams that are going to break through in the Big Ten Conference. So just, especially now with the expansion, you've got the addition of Oregon and USC and Washington, and to a certain extent, even UCLA. To me, that just makes things a lot more difficult for programs like Maryland and Rutgers. And so I think he's a good coach. Yeah, I'm fine with him at number 11, just not a great team. But yeah, you're right. If you overlook Rutgers or you don't take them seriously, same as with Maryland, they have a tendency to make things more difficult than they need to be. So I'm cool with him at number 11. Here's where we really start to get into some significant disagreement, Trent.
Chris was not happy here. He was not happy when he saw that.
Your top 10. These are the top 10 coaches in the Big Ten Conference, according to Trent Knoop. Trent, who do you got at number 10?
I have Chris's favorite football coach, Jonathan Smith from Michigan State. Now, listen.
What the hell?
Oregon State is not a good football program. They have not been a good football program in a while. The last 2 years, he's taken them 10-3 and 8-4, and he had them as high as number 10 in the AP pool. So, and I feel like when you go to a team like Michigan State, while Michigan State has been just dreadful the past couple of years, they're going to be better than what Oregon State was, I believe. And yeah, I want to see him coach a whole season, maybe 2 seasons, but he's done some good things at Oregon State, so I can't overly knock the guy.
You know what, Matt Kirby, those are my thoughts exactly. And that's what I said to Trent when I first saw this list. I was like, the Pac-12, now defunct Pac-12, sucks, no longer in existence. So you have that working against him. I mean, the other thing is I don't know, maybe this is just too damn superficial, but I don't like the way he looks. I feel he reminds me of the Cousin Eddie. Is it Cousin Eddie from Christmas Vacation? He's kind of got that little vibe going on. I just don't take him seriously as a football coach. The idea of him coming in, not even coaching a game in the Big Ten and already being a top 10 coach.
There's only 18 teams. It's not like we're talking about 50 teams in the conference.
No. Send his ass to the back of the line, drop him significantly. I would be more comfortable with Loxley in the top 10 or Schiano in the top 10 over Jonathan Smith. Even put Bielema in there. I just have an issue with Jonathan Smith. I'm not a believer in this guy.
Is it because he coaches at Michigan State, or is it because of Jonathan Smith?
It's a soup. It's a mixture of all kinds of things. I don't believe in the Pac-12. I don't believe in Michigan State. I'm not really a big fan of the vibe. He's got no aura. There's zero aura with this guy. And so, yeah, I mean, I got to see what it looks like in the Big Ten, but listen, when we were putting out rankings before, I thought Michigan State could be a sneaky good team. I thought that they could be a problem. I know that, all jokes aside, Jonathan Smith came in, he brought some transfers with him, and, they got a quarterback over there that they seem to feel pretty good about. And I thought, okay, Michigan State could be a problem. I just want to make it official at this point. I do not think Michigan State is going to be a problem. I'm not going to get into the specific reasons why. I just don't think they're going to be an issue. And having Jonathan Smith, number 10 on this list, top 10 in the Big Ten Conference, is egregious.
Put him at number 19. Change it and put him at 19.
Take him off the list altogether. NA not applicable. Let's go to number 9, Trent. Who's at your number 9 spot?
This is purely based off of his track record. I have Matt Rule at Nebraska. He took Nebraska to 5-7 last year as his first season coaching them, but he did such a great job at both Temple and Baylor. He's a very, very good college football coach, and I think it's a matter of time until he makes Nebraska better than 5-7. And look, I think Nebraska, they were the number 1 team in losses, between 1 and 6 points or something last year. I think they had 5 losses where they could have actually won the game, but they would just always turn the ball over or do something stupid to lose it. So I have Matt Rule there at 9.
Yeah, Michigan wasn't one of those close losses. They got their ass beat by the Wolverines in Lincoln last year. But you're right. Generally speaking, I think Matt Rule is a good coach. I do think it's inevitable that he will have Nebraska competing at a higher level than what we've become accustomed to from the Cornhuskers as of late. Certainly a step up from Scott Frost. There's no question about it. But again, tough place to recruit, man. You're tucked away in the middle of nowhere out in cornfields, asking high-level recruits to want to come out there.
Dylan Raiola.
Well, you got to throw a bag, right? You got to pay these guys to get them out there. Doesn't he have a relative on the staff as well? Isn't there like
there might be, I don't know,
uncle or something like that? Maybe I'm thinking of a different guy. But either way you cut it, even if you've got bags of cash, it is tough to recruit. Listen, I've been out to Lincoln, Nebraska. Once you go out and experience it, stay there for the night, and then drive your ass back home wherever you're from. Like, that's how I view Lincoln, Nebraska. So Yeah, I think he's doing the best with what he's got to work with. I do think they're going to get better as time goes on, so I don't have an issue with him at number 9. Let's go to number 8. Prepare yourself, Trent, because you're about to get your ass beat in the comment section. Who do you have at number 8, the 8th best coach in the Big Ten Conference?
I have the new Michigan coach, Sharon Moore. It's kind of tough knowing where to rank him because, yeah, he did some great things last year. He beat Penn State, beat Maryland, beat Ohio State. He's 4-0 as an interim head coach at Michigan, but he's only coached 4 games. So I think number 8 in the Big Ten is a great spot to put somebody like this who they've done great things, but you want to see him do it that for at least a season. You want to see him win 9 or 10 games this year at Michigan or more to elevate him past 8.
It has been confirmed. His uncle does work at Nebraska. Multiple people confirming. Thank you for reinforcing that I was right. Matt Kirby on your Sharon Moore pick says, get this guy off the mic. Sharon Moore at number 8. I get where you're coming from. He's only been the head coach, or we've only seen him as interim head coach for 4 games. At the same time, those were 4 pretty big games. Well, Bowling Green, not a very big game. Maryland on the road, though, to get win number 1,000. I consider that a big game. Certainly at Penn State was a huge game for the Michigan Wolverines, and everything that sort of surrounded that game and how it played out, just how incredible that whole situation was. And then obviously the win over Ohio State. Hold
on, before you go, there's 7 guys, of course, ranked above Sharon Moore.
Yeah.
Based on what he's done so far at Michigan, I don't see how you could drop any of these guys lower than Moore. I don't see how you could.
I see a way, but I'm biased. Like I'm looking at the guys you have ahead of him and I'm like, drop that loser. Get this guy out of there. But, trying to take the bias aside, putting Sharon Moore at number 8, I think we all agree it's only because of the unknown. We all believe he can skyrocket up to number 1 after this season if he takes care of business and does everything that we think he's going to be able to do. But you got to go out and do it. Similar to how we feel about Alex Orji, right? Like all the intangibles, all the things you think that it takes to make somebody great at what they do. This is a prove-it year for Sharon Moore. Off to a hell of a start, given what he was able to do last year and under the circumstances he did it. But now he's the guy, and the expectation at Michigan is, look, you just won a national championship. Now we're expecting reload. We're expecting Big Ten championships. We're expecting back in the college football playoff and making another run at a national championship, and asking him to do that in a new look Big Ten conference that includes Oregon on the schedule. You got Texas coming in week 2, so it's not going to be easy. But if he takes care of business this year, I would expect, if you redo this list after the year and he does what he's supposed to do, I would expect to see.
He would definitely go up. Yeah.
So let's go. These are all the coaches. Now we're past number 8. These are all the coaches basically that Trent thinks are better than Sharon Moore. Let's go to number 7 here. Who do you have at number 7?
At number 7, I've got PJ Fleck. You're another one of your guys, like you're pretty high on him. I think Minnesota is not an easy place to win at. It's not a great recruiting place. You don't go out there and land a bunch of 5-star players. No, he's 50-34 at Minnesota. He's won all 5 bowl games that he's got him there. He's not a bad coach. He's kind of a little weird. Dude's a little strange, but I think that he's a good coach and he's done some good things at Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They don't really recruit elite talent there. Again, another tough place to win. Does have a winning record, pretty good in the bowl games. PJ Fleck, I feel like if you put him in a room and you turn off the lights, I feel like he would glow. I feel like you'd still be able to see him just fine. Like there is a certain level of energy he carries with him that is just it's off the charts. I find it to be a little off-putting, and maybe that's why I would move him down the list. Not really sure that's a fair assessment. A fair reason to do that. You're right. He's 50-34 at Minnesota. It seems, that Minnesota can be a tough game with PJ Fleck running the show. And so, putting him at number 7, again, the bias in me is like, there's no way this guy's better than Sharon Moore. But at the end of the day, taking all the things into consideration, I'm reluctantly okay with him being at number 7 here. Let's move off of PJ Fleck. I've already had enough of it. Let's go to number 6. Who do you have as the 6th best head coach in the Big Ten Conference?
I have Luke Fickell, and primarily the main reason I have Fickell in number 6 is because of what he did at Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati, well, they went to the college football playoff, which was absolutely insane when they did that. But then he also won 9 and 10 games there. Last year was a little bit of a down year at Wisconsin. They won 8 and 6, but I think Fickell's a good coach. He was terrible that year. He coached Ohio State, but we're way past that, right? And
yeah.
and
Thank you, Luke Fickell, by the way, for the one bright spot in an otherwise down time for Michigan fans.
But I feel like that he's going to get Wisconsin back to being one of the top programs in the Big Ten, and it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with him at number 6. I mean, good, solid coach. He's at a good program in Wisconsin, so the expectations are going to be high. It's completely different than what we were just talking about with Minnesota. Like, you can't go become the head coach at Wisconsin and continue to have subpar seasons year after year. But I do think Luke Fickell is a guy that can have the Badgers highly competitive. Saw him at Big Ten Media Days last year. He's got a phenomenal tan. I mean, this guy's really put together well. I just think he's a decent coach. I think the Badgers are going to be better off with him. So for that reason, I'm okay with him at number 6. Number 5, we're going to have issues with. Who do you have at number 5, and explain yourself?
All right. So I have Mr. Can't Beat Michigan or Ohio State, James Franklin. In 10 seasons, in 10 seasons, he is 88 and 39 coaching Penn State. He wins ball games. He just cannot beat the upper echelon teams in the Big Ten. He has one Big Ten title while coaching Penn State. I don't think anybody that's lower than him that you could put above him, but I definitely can't put him above number 5 right now because he just can't get the job done when he has to. So I feel like number 5 is probably a good spot for Franklin.
That's why I have an issue with him at number 5. We talk about guys like Sharon Moore and some of these other, you got to prove it in the Big Ten. James Franklin has proven it in the Big Ten. He's proven he can't get it done with Penn State. Yeah, they can go out and win 10 games, but when you're a good team in the Big Ten Conference, you should be able to go out and win 9 or 10 games every single year. The problem with James Franklin is he makes horrible in-game decisions and he can't win the big games. And it's year after year after year. And so because of that, to me, James Franklin is a known commodity. He's an okay coach. He's not a great coach. I think probably this is going to be his final year at Penn State. I think they're getting pretty fed up with Franklin's nonsense.
So where would you put James Franklin?
Let me go back and see. So I would drop him below Fickell, drop him below Fleck, drop him below Sharon Moore. I mean, somewhere you got Matt Rule at number 9 and Jonathan Smith at number 10. I'd move Franklin just ahead of Matt Rule and put him below Sharon Moore, put him below PJ Fleck, put him below Luke Fickell. So, yeah, to me, James Franklin, I mean, on this list, he's got to drop 3 or 4 spots because he's a proven loser. You can count on it year after year. Penn State's going to fumble the bag as long as James Franklin is leading the way. So having him at number 5, egregious once again on Trent's list. But we'll move on. We'll move off of it to number 4. So no, I don't know whether or not this is okay or if this is terrible. I'll let you explain it, and then I'll decide how I feel.
All right, so this is obviously based on longevity. Kirk Ferentz, 25 seasons at Iowa. They have 21 out of the 25 seasons there. They have 21 bowl victories. I mean, I feel like he's a pretty decent coach. I don't think Iowa is a place where they're recruiting a bunch of offensive talent for sure, let alone great talent altogether. I think that it's a well-developed place, especially defensively. And if he had any sort of an offense whatsoever, I think that Iowa would be one of the best teams in the country.
I mean, dude, I didn't have my driver's license yet when he was hired out there. Like, he's been out there for a long time. Yeah, I mean, look, Iowa's been in the Big Ten championship game, twice as of late. Michigan's beaten them both times, but they've put themselves there. I think that being in the Big Ten West certainly helped Iowa a lot because, out there you can go to the Big Ten championship game if you've got a few losses on your record. It's not going to happen in today's new look Big Ten, but I don't know, man. I just feel like Iowa is one of those teams that similar to Maryland, similar to Minnesota. I kind of put them all in the same category, but maybe I'll just default to the fact that he's the longest tenured coach in the Big Ten. He's been around for a long time. You've got it here in the article. He's 196 and 119 overall. They do tend to do well in bowl season unless they have to play the University of Michigan, which is not technically a bowl game. That's the Big Ten championship game. So scratch that from the list. Yeah, I'm okay with him at number 4. I don't think he's a great head coach. So that's where it's like, it's a little weird for me. Like, I don't view Kirk Ferentz, like when you mention him, I'm not like, that's a great football coach. Not in the Big Ten conference. I think generally speaking, he's a good coach, but to have him at number 4 in the conference, that seems awfully lofty.
Okay, so once again, who would you put above him though?
Let me look.
Sharon Moore?
Question. No.
So there's nobody.
Looking back, I wouldn't put PJ Fleck over him. I wouldn't put Luke Fickell over him. Certainly wouldn't put James Franklin over him. Sharon Moore, I would say yes, but again, that would be bias.
Like, we're talking about a guy who's coached 4 games. Like, and I'm with you. Like, I think Sharon Moore is going to be a really good head coach. I think he's going to be at Michigan for a very long time and is going to be very successful at Michigan. But at the end of the day, he's coached 4 games with Jim Harbaugh's blueprint on the game. More than likely, I haven't seen Sharon Moore coach an actual game like that's all Sharon Moore, and that's what I want to see. Where these other guys have been around for a lot longer than Sharon Moore has, and we've seen them coach in the Big Ten.
Everybody's gonna have haters.
Certified hater, Sharon Moore hater, Trent Knoop giving you his 2 cents on the matter. Kirk Ferentz at number 4. He thinks Kirk Ferentz is a way better coach than Sharon Moore. Let's go to number 3 on your list. Who do you got at number 3 as the 3rd best coach in the Big Ten Conference?
I have Lincoln Riley at USC. I think ever since he took over for Bob Stoops over Oklahoma, he's arguably the top offensive mind in all of college football. Every year, their offense is legit. It's legit at USC, but defense is definitely an issue. And it seems like USC's usually they're up there. Oklahoma was always up there. They would always lose a game or 2 that they should not lose, though. And until he can go out there and show that they can bring a defense to USC, I don't think he could get any higher than number 3. But as of right now, that's who I have there.
Yeah, agreed. Great offensive mind, has coached multiple Heisman Trophy winners. I mean, the guy's a winner. I do think USC in the Big Ten Conference is going to be highly, highly competitive. You got to replace, some talent there from last year, but I don't have any issue with Lincoln Riley at number 3, even though first year in the Big Ten overall, I think he's a great coach. And so I'm not going to push back too much on that. We'll go to number 2. So this is going to tell everybody who you got number 1. Who do you have at number 2, second best overall head coach in the Big Ten Conference?
All right, you ready for all this, Chris? All the hatred comments coming out. All right, number 2, I have Dan Lanning at Oregon. Speaking of offensive talent, offensive teams, Oregon is as good as anybody. He's 22-5 in 2 seasons at Oregon. He's a great football coach. He just hasn't been there long enough yet for me to put him at number 1. But I mean, you could definitely put Dan Lanning at number 1 if you wanted to.
Yeah, and I probably would, and we'll get into why next. But Dan Lanning, again, overall record, you mentioned it, 22-5 at Oregon. When I look at Michigan's schedule this year, I look at Oregon as like that's the team I'm the most nervous about. It's not Ohio State, it's not Texas, it's Oregon at the top of the list for me. And I think great offensive line. They always have fast athletes out there in Eugene. And I think that he's a solid head coach. And so we'll see what it looks like in the Big Ten, but let me put it this way. I don't have any issue with him being at the top of the list right now based on what he's done there. But let's talk about, this is the guy that Trent loves the most in the conference, thinks he is the greatest Big Ten head coach. Who do you have at number 1? And you're going to have to sell people on it. Why is this guy at the top of your list?
This is a tough team right here.
Because
I like to know where Lou Holtz is right now.
He is 56-8 as a head coach. He is 39-3 in Big Ten games with the 3 losses coming to Michigan. The dude wins ball games. He currently has a Michigan problem, and I believe all Michigan fans love Ryan Day because of that. But if you take that away, Ryan Day is statistically, I believe, the most winningest coach in college football right now, if you look at the win-loss ratio, he wins games. It's just crazy to think about because I believe that Ryan Day is on the hot seat. If he loses to Michigan, like we've talked about, he's probably fired.
So you think about how crazy that dynamic is. That
I know.
You think the best coach in the Big Ten right now, if he loses one game this year,
yep.
he's the best coach in the conference, will be on the hot seat if he loses that game. That is mind blowing. But I think you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just think that's a crazy place to be if you're Ryan Day.
And I put that at the end of my article. I was like, is the top ranked coach on the hot seat this season if he loses another to Michigan? And I think he is, which is absolutely crazy because again, he's 56-8 as a head coach at Ohio State and 39-3 in the Big Ten. I mean, those numbers are pretty surreal.
Sounds like an OSU fan. Let's see. You can't put him at number 1. The guy was born on third base. We got another third base. CJ says Trent lives in Ohio. Everybody find his address. It's true. Trent does live in Ohio. Maybe we got like a Trojan horse here. Are you like really an Ohio State fan? Like deep down? Look, as much as it's weird. Because, see, look, your wife's coming to your rescue. It's just stats. It's stats and facts and numbers. And
it's factual, people. Come on, get with the program.
When you look at the facts, statistically speaking, record-wise, it's hard to argue against what Trent is saying. And I do think he's justified in putting Ryan Day at number 1. And it's weird because, like, I want to hate the guy, but I think he's kind of fun to have around because Michigan beats the shit out of him year in and year out. And so, like, it's gotten to the point where I really don't even, you know what this is? We've reached that point with Ryan Day. You remember when Ohio State fans would pack Michigan Stadium and have the signs that said, keep Harbaugh forever. We love Jim Harbaugh sort of thing. Like, I feel like that's what I'm developing for Ryan Day. This
is a tough team right here.
I enjoy having him around. I love watching him jump around like a fool in the pregame and go after senior citizens.
To know what Lou Holtz is right now.
I think you're right overall. I mean, the guy wins a lot of football games. His big problem right now, his only problem is the University of Michigan. And if he can get that figured out, there's no question that I think he's cemented himself as the top coach in the conference right now. But he hasn't figured it out. And so because of that, to me, there's a question. Is it Dan Lanning? Is it Ryan Day? But because of the success that Ryan Day has had overall at Ohio State, outside of the problem with Michigan, I think reluctantly you do got to put him at number 1. And again, we could sit here and try to, blow smoke up your ass and put Sharon Moore at the top of the list, but we're trying to be real about the way we see things. And the reality is Ryan Day has won a lot of football games at Ohio State. He has lost very few. He just happens to continue losing to Michigan.
I think we learned one thing through this debate
fine with me.
Is that I'm much more realistic than Chris. Chris is extremely biased. He has Michigan.
I'm agreeing with you. On most of them, I would just take James Franklin out of the top 5, and I would kick Jonathan Smith out of the list altogether. But outside of that, I think you were pretty much spot on. I don't really have an issue with it.
All right.
Look at you. See, Trent, we can find common ground if we try. And I think we did find common ground on this list. I came into it with guns blazing. I was really going to go after you for having Ryan Day at number 1. But overall, you know what? Damn it, you're right. I mean,
to make everybody feel better, which I know it won't. But last year I had Jim Harbaugh number 1 and Ryan Day 2.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's fair. And I think most people would agree with it. So, Jim Harbaugh goes off to the NFL. He's now gone. We haven't played the 2024 season yet. So a lot of it is speculation. I do think Ryan Day's got to be at that top spot. But again, when it comes to Sharon Moore, we'll see how it plays out in the fall. We'll see what happens on game days. And if he does what he's supposed to do, like Sharon Moore will probably, if Trent revisits this list in late January, Sharon Moore might be at the top of it. I mean, this is a big pivotal. Somebody let Sharon Moore know that if he takes care of business, Trent is going to move him up the list significantly.
He will be on the coveted Trent Noop's top spot of his rankings.
Trent Noop's top spot. What a list, though, Trent. Appreciate Trent putting that together. Right? That helped kill what? We're at 48 minutes. Jesus Christ. Last time I looked at the clock, we were like almost at 20. I didn't know that we would go an hour. It does look like we're going to go an hour. We are going to end it on an article that I just put out before we went live. I'm talking, of course, about EA Sports the much highly anticipated college football 25 game coming out, July 19th? I think if you bought it online, you get it a couple days earlier or whatever. You can download it early, but July 19th is going to be available to everybody. Probably going to sell like 1 billion copies of that game. I know you've already got it. You sent me you bought like the highest level package.
Yeah, I bought the bundle for Madden and
yeah. So they got Trent hook, line, and sinker. I'm in on it. I know somebody asked if we're going to be putting together some sort of online dynasty thing. We're still looking at that. It's just a lot of shit going on right now for me to worry about video games. But I am worried about this video game because I've been waiting for it for a long time, 10 years, and we finally get it in July. But I have an issue. I have an issue with EA Sports, and I'm not really sure what the hell's going on over there. So EA Sports, over the last, several days and weeks, they've been putting out these little teasers, like here's what the graphics look like, and here's some of the game day traditions. And then as of late, they put out what some of the ratings are and how they've ranked certain things. And prior to those lists, I was totally fine with EA. I'm like, you got a Wolverine on the cover. Once again, phenomenal. All the highlights we've seen come out, like the video highlights. You got Donovan Edwards, doing the Heisman pose and like driving a Buckeye down into the turf. Like I was all on board the EA train. And then I saw some of these ratings come out and I'm like, what the hell is wrong with the people over at EA Sports? So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through some of these ratings that they put out. Trent and I are going to chop it up. Did they get it right? I think they got it wrong. We'll ask for your input as well. Let's find out if EA did Michigan dirty with their ratings list. I think they did. And we're going to come right out of the gate with toughest places to play. I've really got an issue with this one, Trent. I think you already know where Michigan is placed in some of these rankings. But for those who don't know, EA Sports recently put out, here are the toughest places to play in the game. And on their top 25 list, you would think Michigan, a program that hasn't lost a home game since the COVID season in 2020, defending reigning national champions, would at least be within the top 10. Michigan State, the biggest stadium in the Western Hemisphere, biggest stadium in the country. I mean, you got to give some love to the Big House. That's a tough place to play. Well, not according to the folks from EA Sports. They've got Michigan Stadium at number 16, the 16th toughest place to play. So the teams ranked ahead of them, just so that we're aware. You got South Carolina at number 15, Auburn at 14, Tennessee at 13, Clemson at 12, Oregon at 11, Florida at 10, Florida State at number 9, Memorial Stadium for Oklahoma at number 8, Wisconsin number 7, Penn State number 6, Georgia number 5, Ohio State number 4, LSU number 3, Alabama number 2, and Texas A&M number 1. Trent, what are your thoughts?
9 SEC teams.
Yeah, well, maybe there's a little SEC bias there with the EA folks. What do you think about Michigan Stadium being number 16 toughest place to play in the game?
Well, I mean, Michigan has not lost a home game since the COVID year of 2020. 3 straight years they have not lost a game at home. There's no way you can get me to believe that Michigan is the 16th toughest place to play. I mean, we've been there at these home games in the recent years. That Ohio State game back in 21, that place was it was rocking, man. Washington that same year, that place was crazy at the night game. I mean, the place can get loud if it wants to, but the bottom line is Michigan doesn't lose at home, and I believe that's a big part of it, right? So in Kyle Field, Texas A&M, since Michigan's lost a game, they've lost 3 or 4 home games at least. Like, how are they the number 1 team? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we have to have somebody from EA. Maybe that's the next step, is we have to have somebody come on and explain themselves. Like, how is South Carolina a tougher place to play than Ann Arbor? I don't understand that. But I'm pretty sure that Michigan has the second longest active home winning streak in college football, second only to Georgia. And you're right, that dates back 3 years. So I find it very, very strange that you're going to put Michigan Stadium at number 16 on this list, considering how well the Wolverines have done at home over the last 3 years. To me, that's, I talked about some things on your list being egregious. Michigan Stadium at number 16, that's egregious. That is offensive to me. I don't understand how people come to that conclusion, but it is what it is. And that's not the only thing that I think EA screwed up on. So do I want to address this? No, let's go to let's go to another egregious one, and then I'll come back to this one, because top 10 defenses. Trent, in your mind, where do you think Michigan's defense should rank in the upcoming game? I mean, you're talking about Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, Josiah Stewart, and Derek Moore on the edge. We know what they have with the linebackers. Could be the best duo in the country with Ernest Hausman and Jay Sean Barham. And then the secondary, like, it's not like EA was like, well, Rod Moore is injured, so we got to bring the Michigan defense down. Like, Rod Moore is still a part of the equation. Will Johnson's still a part of the equation. Makari Page back there. Where do you think this defense belongs in the overall top 10 defenses according to EA? Where should they be?
I would be okay with second. I would be okay with Georgia at number 1, but not where they're ranked at. I'm not okay with that.
Number 7. That's where EA's put them. Number 7, they've got the Michigan Wolverines behind Notre Dame, behind Clemson, behind Alabama, behind Oregon, behind Georgia, and they've got the Buckeyes at number 1 overall. We've talked about the Michigan defense compared to the Ohio State defense. I would argue that Michigan has a better defense than Ohio State. Again, trying to take the bias out of it, just going position by position, player by player. I think there's a strong argument to be made that Michigan has a better defense than Ohio State. I think they do. But to put Michigan 7th on the list in the rankings, again, another egregious mistake. 2 potential first rounders in the middle of the defensive line, a first rounder at quarterback, and then all the other weapons that we talked about and experience. I just find it to be a little bit straight. You put them behind Notre Dame, you put them behind Clemson, you put them behind Oregon. I don't understand. I mean, they've got Michigan rated pretty highly defensively, a 90 overall, but 7th on the list. That just feels offensive to me, Trent. I'm assuming that you agree.
Yeah, you could make an argument that Michigan should be number 1 on this list. The only team, like I said, the only team I'm okay with being number 1 over Michigan is Georgia. But I don't know, not that Ohio State has a terrible defense, but I don't know how you could justify making Ohio State the number 1 ranked defense in the game. Like, I don't know where they got that information at.
It's the same shit that everybody does with Ohio State every year. You put them near the top of the rankings. You put them at, you just assume that Ohio State is going to be this great program. And, to a certain extent, we talked about it when we were talking about Ryan Day and where he falls on the list. Ohio State does win a lot of football games. So yep. I don't know if they've got people sitting in a room that are really analyzing like who's on the defense and what type of impact they make. But to have Ohio State at number 1 and Michigan at 7, to me, that's very puzzling when there's a strong argument to be made that Michigan has a better defense than Ohio State going into the season. Let's continue with the big mistakes that EA made. This time, I think it's a mistake with the power rankings. So power rankings they put out, these are the overall best teams in the game. EA, once again, you would think reigning national champions. I get it. Michigan lost a ton to the NFL. Jim Harbaugh's no longer there. They've got a lot to replace, but championship level team, Michigan's been winning at a high level now for a while. It's reload in Ann Arbor. But according to EA in the power rankings, Michigan's not even in the top 10. Outside of the top 10, just looking in, they've got the Wolverines at number 11 behind. Are you ready for this? Here's who's ahead of Michigan in the power rankings. You've got Utah at number 10, Penn State at number 9, LSU at number 8, Notre Dame at 7, Clemson at 6, Texas at 5, Alabama at 4, Oregon at 3, Ohio State right near the top at number 2, and then Georgia number 1. Trent, what are your thoughts on Michigan being number 11 in the power rankings?
Well,
behind Utah.
Obviously, Michigan's that low in the power rankings is because, and we haven't talked about it yet, but EA is not a fan of Michigan's offense. So that's taking away a lot of that overall points that EA uses. But still, yeah, you can't tell me that Utah, Penn State, Notre Dame, Clemson, like none of those teams are better than Michigan. They should not be rated higher than Michigan either. So it's absurd, man.
Absurd, offensive, egregious. As I said, I'm still going to buy the game. Doesn't matter. I can't wait for it to come out. But damn it, I don't understand any of this. This might be one, though. I'm curious to get your thought on this because I skipped over this for a reason. We've talked about 3 categories where I feel like EA just really dropped the ball here. They have shortchanged Michigan considerably. But you just mentioned it. The offense is one that I think is interesting. Right? Because we know that Michigan isn't known for having an explosive offense. It's not a lot of fireworks in Ann Arbor, and ground and pound is not a sexy way to like move the football. But Michigan still does it, and they do it effectively. I had it in the article. So they finished 67th nationally in total offense following the 2023 season. So 67th. I mean, you're very middle of the pack in college football. But in points per game, Michigan was number 14th nationally, averaging almost 36 points per game. So the Wolverines can put up points, but you're right. EA doesn't like the offense. Michigan doesn't put up a lot of yards. It's just not a very flashy offense. And so in terms of the rankings and where Michigan falls, I don't know, because Michigan didn't even make the top 25. The Michigan offense is not even part of the top 25 as far as EA is concerned. So I'll ask you, Trent. I mean, I'm not going to go through the top 10 teams. You've got Clemson at number 10, Missouri at number 9, Colorado at number 8, Miami at number 7, LSU number 6, Ohio State number 5, Texas number 4, Alabama number 3, Oregon number 2, Georgia number 1, Missouri number 9, Clemson number 8, and Miami number 7. Michigan's outside of the top 25. What are your thoughts on that?
It's the brand that Michigan plays. They're not flashy, and I think that's the whole thing with EA Sports right now. They're looking for those flashy players, just the flashiness of the offense, and that's not, as we know, that's not Michigan's brand. They're ground and pound. They're control the game. They're trench play. They're not about throwing for 350 yards a game. That's not Michigan, and I think that's what EA is looking at.
Yeah, I agree, and I spent at least 2 years pounding the table saying that Michigan has to change the way they play offense. They've got to adapt. They've got to become, more vertical. They got to go through the air more. And I kept doing it and doing that game after game. And then Michigan just kept winning and winning. And finally I was like, screw it. It's boring. It's not interesting, but it works. You know what I mean? They just win every single weekend. And so, yeah, I think that's playing a factor. It's not flashy. Michigan's not going to go out and throw for 400 yards. That's how you get a team potentially like Miami in there, or Colorado in there. Like Colorado is all sizzle, very little substance to me as far as I'm concerned. But obviously they're going to be rated highly on this game because there's a lot of hype surrounding Colorado, thanks to Deion Sanders. Yeah. But overall, I'm not going to push back too hard on Michigan being outside of the top 25 offensively. But at the end of the day, again, reigning national champions, show these guys some love. 14th in the country in points scored per game. To have them outside the top 25 overall, I just feel like it was a slap in the face, Trent. As I was reading these lists that were coming out, it was just like, like, what the hell? Where is the respect for Michigan? Thank you for putting Dono on the cover, but you got to show some love in the ratings too.
Just think though, when you start your dynasty with Michigan, you're going to take the 11th best team to a national championship.
That's true. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do it with my son playing quarterback. That's always what I do. Get into the game, create a player, put my son in there, and then we're off to go win multiple Heismans with the Michigan.
So you're
Wolverines.
saying you're taking Alex Orji off?
Yeah, I'm going to have to.
You're just replacing Alex Orji.
My son's going to beat him out. There's no question about it. That's just the way it works in the video game world. That's how I roll. We burned through a lot, I feel like, quickly in an hour. Once again, I thought we might go.
We were both like, it might go 15, 30 minutes, but we'll do a show anyway.
Here we are once again, as usual, eclipsed an hour. Trent, I appreciate you for taking some. Anything else you want to throw out there before we get off episode number 22?
I guess the only thing I'm going to say is I'm sure we'll get into it, but the fans probably won't like my other rankings that I'm going to be doing.
Oh,
especially the running backs.
Yeah, well, I'm now that you've said that, I'm very intrigued to see where you have it because as we all know, I'm very high on Donovan Edwards. So if he's not at the top of the list, I think we're going to have some issues. So we'll look for that list to come out. Trent's going to keep releasing these terrible lists, and then we're going to hop on here and we're going to talk about them on Mondays. So appreciate you, Trent. Appreciate everybody for tuning in to watch a couple Yahoos talk sports for an hour, and we will see you back here next Wednesday, locked and loaded.
Next Monday.
This is a tough team right here.